My world exploded over a text message about a cheese board. The irony wasn't lost on me. One moment, I was finalizing the menu for our small celebratory dinner, and the next, my entire relationship with my in-laws had been detonated by a single vicious social media post. It was supposed to be a quiet, happy announcement. After a decade of grinding away at the firm, of missed school plays and working through holidays, I had finally been named Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. It was more than promotion. It was a validation of every sacrifice, every ounce of energy I had poured into my career. My husband, David, was my rock through it all, my steadfast supporter who never complained about the late nights, and we decided to share the news with our immediate family over a nice, intimate dinner at our home. The guest list was small and meaningful. My parents, who had instilled in me a ferocious work ethic. My younger brother, David's parents, Robert and Helen, and his younger sister, Clara, with her kind-hearted and grounded long-term boyfriend, Ben. The atmosphere that evening was warm and celebratory, filled with the clinking of glasses and the easy, comfortable laughter that comes from years of shared history. I made the announcement during dessert, and the reaction was everything I could have hoped for, a chorus of genuine, enthusiastic congratulations and happy, tearful hugs. That night, wrapped in the love of my family, everything felt perfectly, wonderfully right with the world. The first crack in that perfect facade appeared about 36 hours later, in the form of a phone call from my mother-in-law, Helen. Her tone was unervingly light, almost saccharine. "We're so proud of you, darling," she began, laying it on thick. "This new position, it's such a tremendous achievement. It must, of course, come with a rather significant compensation adjustment, yes?" I, foolishly and without a hint of suspicion, confirmed it. "Yes, it's a very comprehensive package. We're absolutely thrilled and feeling very secure." "Well," she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper that should set off every alarm bell in my head. "That's wonderful to hear, because you see, now that you're truly settled in such a monumental success, and after all these years as a cherished part of our family, 8 wonderful years with David, for as his wife, we feel it's only right and natural that you contribute to Clara's wedding. It's what family does." I was so stunned I nearly dropped the phone. The sheer audacity of it left me momentarily speechless. Contribute? I finally managed to say, my brain scrambling to process the word in this context. "Financially, of course," she clarified, as if explaining a simple concept to a very slow child. "We have a specific figure in mind, one we feel reflects your new standing and your commitment to this family." The number she mentioned next was not just significant. It was astronomical, breathtaking in its presumption. It was the kind of money that could be a down payment on a substantial house, or fund our children's entire college education with room to spare. My mind raced, a frantic tally of our own responsibilities. 2 young kids, a hefty mortgage, retirement savings we were desperately trying to bolster, our own financial plans and dreams. A cold, hard dread settled in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sorry, Helen," I said, my voice firming up as my initial shock began to curdle into anger. "But that's simply not possible. We have our own substantial financial commitments and a future to plan for our children. We'd be absolutely delighted to get Clara and Ben a wonderful, generous wedding gift, of course, the best we can possibly find, but we will not be contributing a lump sum to the wedding fund. That's not our responsibility." The artificial sweetness evaporated from her voice, replaced by a sharp, metallic anger that was clearly simmering just beneath the surface. "How can you be so selfish? After everything we've done for you, the welcome we gave you, we open our hearts and our home to you. This is how you repay that kindness." "Selfish." I shot back, my own temper now fully ignited. "It's my money earned from my work, my sweat, my time away from my family. I am not a bank, and I am not obligated to fund a wedding for two fully capable, employed adults who have good jobs and their own savings. This is a choice you're making, not a necessity. The conversation devolved rapidly from there, descending into a toxic swamp of accusations and insults. My father-in-law, Robert, got on the line, his voice booming with theatrical indignation. They called me ungrateful, a gold digger who had forgotten her place. They said they'd always suspected I was too independent for my own good, that I was clearly corrupting their son with my modern and selfish ideas. The words were carefully chosen, designed to inflict maximum hurt, and they hit their mark with devastating accuracy. We had always gotten along, shared countless holidays, laughed together over family dinners. This sudden, vicious venom was a shocking, brutal departure from the relationship I thought we had. After 10 minutes of this character assassination, I'd had enough. My hands were trembling. "I'm not having this conversation anymore," I said, my voice shaken with a potent mixture of pure rage and deep personal hurt. "Do not contact me about this again." I hung up, my heart hammering against my ribs, and immediately blocked both their numbers on my phone. I was sitting in my office, the scene of my professional triumph, and now the walls felt like they were closing in on me. I just needed to get home, to David, to the sanctuary of our home. He would understand. He would know what to do. I never got the chance to tell him my side of the story first. My phone rang again barely an hour later. David, his voice uncharacteristically tight and strained. "Sweetheart, you need to look at your social media. Right now, it's my parents." With a sinking, leaden feeling in my stomach, I opened the app. There was a long, meticulously detailed post from Helen, set to public for all the world to see. It was a masterpiece of manipulative storytelling. It painted a picture of a loving, humble family, just trying to give their beloved daughter the beautiful, dream wedding she deserved. It described in pathetic detail how they had humbly approached their newly promoted, wealthy daughter-in-law for a little help in their time of need, only for me to verbally assault them, mock their financial situation, and flaunt my wealth in their faces. I was portrayed as a cruel, selfish monster who had spit on the very concept of family, a villainess who had kicked them when they were down. The public shaming was a tactical nuclear strike designed to annihilate my social reputation and force me into compliance through sheer humiliation. I felt physically nauseous, my face burning with a mixture of shame and fury. They had taken a private, ugly disagreement and turned it into a public weapon, trying to burn my character to the ground. While still on the phone with David, I choked out the entire, sordid story, the outrageous demanded amount, the horrible names they called me, the venom in their voices. David was silent for a long moment, and I could almost feel the anger radiating through the phone. "I knew it," he finally said, his voice low and furious, like the calm before a storm. "I knew that post was a load of garbage the second I read it. It didn't sound like you at all. Don't you worry for a single second. I'll handle this." His immediate, unwavering belief in me was a cool, soothing balm on a raw, stinging wound they had inflicted. Minutes after we hung up, my phone lit up again. "Clara," I sent it to voicemail, too emotionally shredded and furious to speak to anyone. A moment later, a text message came through from her. It was a lifeline. I saw the post. "I know my parents are lying. I just spoke to David and got the real story. I am so sorry they dragged you into this. This is unacceptable. We will handle it." The handling became clear over the next few days. The emails started pouring into my work account, the one channel I hadn't thought to block. They were desperate, pleading, and utterly transparent. "We're so sorry. We didn't mean a word of it. It was the stress talking. Please, you have to make David and Clara talk to us again. They've cut us off. You're the only one who can fix this. You have to forgive us." I felt no inclination to be their savior. Their apology wasn't for profound pain and humiliation they had caused me. It was a panic reaction to the consequence of being ostracized by their own children. It was about their comfort, not my healing. I didn't reply to a single one. Their words felt empty, hollowed out by their actions. A couple of days later, Clara and Ben came over to our house, their faces grim. We sat in the living room with cups of untouched tea, and they laid out the shocking truth we had never known. Robert, it turned out, had made a series of disastrous, high-risk investments over the past 3 years. He'd lost a substantial portion of their retirement savings, a secret he had kept buried under a mountain of pride and shame. Compounding this financial disaster, Helen had a pathological, unchecked need to maintain a facade of effortless, lavish wealth. She shopped compulsively for designer goods, insisted on the most expensive restaurants and vacations, and lived in a state of profound denial about their rapidly draining accounts. Clara had only begun to piece the truth together when they started wedding planning. She had assumed naturally that her parents would contribute significantly, just as they had so publicly and proudly done for our wedding. But their promised contributions were suddenly mysteriously paltry. When she pressed them, when the excuses became too flimsy to hold, the ugly truth finally emerged. She, Ben, and his perfectly lovely and reasonable parents had already recalibrated their plans for a smaller, more intimate, and financially responsible wedding. They were disappointed but pragmatic, and most importantly, they were perfectly happy with their new, realistic plans. My in-laws, however, were utterly mortified. The idea that the groom's family would be contributing more than them was a catastrophic blow to their pride. A public relations disaster they felt they couldn't survive. My promotion was their perceived golden ticket. They had done the math and decided that my new salary could easily fund the extravagant, showy wedding of their dreams, allowing them to save face, maintain their superior image, and impress Ben's family. My refusal wasn't just a denial of money. It was a demolition of their carefully constructed illusion, the pin that popped their fragile bubble of superiority. The social media post was a fit of pure, unadulterated spite from people who'd been backed into a corner of their own making. Their public post had backfired spectacularly. In their frantic attempt to paint me as the villain, they had inadvertently revealed their own financial struggles to the entire world, shattering the image of wealth and ease they had worked so hard to project for decades. They were now facing the triple humiliation of exposed lies, of failed and cruel manipulation, and the most painful consequence of all, the loss of their children's respect and presence. David looked at me after Clara finished her heartbreaking story, his hand finding mine. "You don't have to forgive them," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "Not now, not ever. What they did was irrational, cruel, and calculated. We are a united front on this. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." And we were. The emails kept coming, a relentless digital tide of 3 or 4 a day, each one a tedious variation on the same pathetic theme. "We're sorry, we didn't mean it. It was a mistake. Make our children talk to us. You're the key to fixing our family. It's all up to you." They were blatantly putting the entire responsibility for their fractured relationships squarely on my shoulders, trying to make their emotional labor my problem. It was both pathetically transparent and deeply enraging. I spoke to David and Clara about the pressure I was feeling, the guilt they were trying to weaponize. They were in complete, furious agreement. "It is absolutely not your job to broker peace," Clara said, her own anger flashing. "This is between them and us. Even if you forgave them today, that doesn't mean I will. I need an apology for my sake, for the way they behaved. They need to apologize to us for their actions, not just use you as a conduit to get back in our good graces. They don't get to skip the hard work." We decided, collectively and with heavy but determined hearts, to maintain a firm stance of no contact. It was tough. We felt a twinge of guilt about their age, about the memories, about our kids who had been so close to them. but their behavior was undeniably toxic. We realized that being older didn't grant them a free pass or immunity from the consequences of their own destructive choices. For 3 weeks, the emails finally trickled to a stop. The silence felt heavy but peaceful. I dare to hope that this radio silence meant they were finally, truly reflecting on their actions, sitting with the consequences of their behavior. That fragile hope was utterly shattered when my dad called, his voice weary and sad. "Your father-in-law has been calling me nonstop," he said with a heavy sigh. "All day." I finally answered just to get him to stop the incessant ringing. My stomach dropped. "What did he say, Dad?" I asked, the dread pooling cold inside me. He just unloaded on you," my dad said, his tone laced with protective anger I rarely heard. "Said you were being impossibly difficult and manipulative, that you were deliberately keeping David and Clara from them, poisoning them against their own parents. And then he started in on your mother and me." My blood ran cold. "What did he say about you and Mom?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My dad, ever calm and stoic, reluctantly relayed the torrent of insults. They had called them failures as parents, blamed them for raising a stingy, selfish daughter who lacked family values. They'd even dredged up the details of our wedding from years ago, boastfully comparing contributions and throwing their past financial generosity in his face, a generosity we now knew they could no longer afford and had probably resented all along. They had attacked my parents' character, their values, their very essence, simply for the crime of being my parents. That was my line, the final, uncrossable boundary. They could insult me all they wanted. I was building a callus against that. But dragging my innocent, kind-hearted, supportive parents into their disgusting, manipulative mess was an unforgivable act of war. It ignited a fury in me so pure and so white-hot it was blinding. After getting the whole story from my dad and confirming that he had finally, definitively blocked them, I stormed into the living room, my body trembling with rage, and told David everything, his face darkened with a protective, cold fury I had seen only a handful of times in our life together. "Unblock them," I said, my voice trembling but steady with purpose. "I'm calling them. Right now. This ends now." David made the call from his phone, his jaw clenched. When Helen answered, her voice tentative and wary, I didn't give her a chance to utter a single word of greeting. "Listen to me, and listen well, because I'm only going to say this once," I started, my voice low and shaken with a terrifying intensity. "You have crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. You can say whatever vile nonsense you want about me, and I will wear your insults like a badge of honor, but you will never, ever speak to my parents that way again. They are kind, decent, honorable people who have nothing to do with the disgusting, manipulative drama you have created. You are pathetic. You are liars living in a fantasy world of your own making. And you are so desperate to blame everyone else for the mess you made of your own lives that you would attack two of the best people I know. You are a disgrace." They tried to interject, to sputter a defense, to turn it back on me. But I talked over them, my words a torrent of pent-up fury and pain that had been festering for weeks. I listed every transgression, every lie, every moment of manipulation, from the initial demand for money to the social media post to the cowardly attack on my parents. I didn't care about being polite. I didn't care about preserving a family peace that was already ashes. I cared about defending my parents' honor and drawing my boundary in fire and steel. After 15 cathartic, brutal minutes, when I had said everything I needed to say and the heat of my anger had burned down to embers, I simply said, "Do not contact me, my husband, or my parents ever again. You are dead to us." And I hung up. The silence that followed in our living room was profound, ringing with the echo of my words. I was shaking, adrenaline coursing through me, but a strange, clean sense of peace washed over me. The poison was out. I had drawn my line, and it was permanent. For 5 months, there was blessed, uninterrupted radio silence. It was blissful. We focused on our lives, our work, our children. We had family movie nights, went on trips, lived our lives without the constant, low-grade anxiety their presence had created. The kids asked about their grandparents a few times at first, little questions that tug at my heart. But we gave simple, neutral answers, and eventually, as children do, they moved on, their lives filled with other joys. We were healing, our family unit becoming stronger and more resilient without the toxicity. Then, the beautiful cream-colored invitations for Clara and Ben's wedding went out. True to her word, and with our full and enthusiastic support, Clara did not invite her parents. She had given them a simple, non-negotiable condition for any future reconciliation, a sincere, specific, in-person apology to me and to my parents, delivered in front of her and David. They had not offered one, not a single word. The silence was broken not with the humility of an apology, but with the roar of entitlement, when they realized, through the family grapevine, that they had received an invitation. They ambushed Clara at her apartment. We heard about it later from a furious Ben who had been there. They had demanded be included, to play the proud parent of the bride. And when Clara stood her ground, her voice steady as she reiterated the need for a genuine apology, they exploded. They accused me of masterminding the entire estrangement, of being a puppeteer pulling all their children's strings. In a final, desperate, pathetic move, Robert threatened to cut Clara out of their will entirely. Clara, bless her strong, clear-eyed heart, had actually laughed in their faces. "What inheritance, Dad?" she'd asked coolly, her voice dripping with a disdain they had fully earned. "You're burning through what's left of your retirement to keep up appearances. There won't be anything left for you to live on, let alone for us to inherit, by the time you're gone. Your threats are as empty and bankrupt as your bank account." The unvarnished truth, delivered so bluntly by their own daughter, sent them into a sputtering, cursing rage. They hurled insults at her, at Ben, and at me before storming out. And true to their deeply ingrained nature, they took to social media, posting a long, rambling, and incoherent screed about being the tragic victims of ungrateful, manipulative children and a wicked daughter-in-law, grandly claiming they were boycotting the wedding out of moral principle. Nobody with a shred of sense bought it. They were just digging their hole deeper, and everyone in our social circle could see it, their credibility now completely shattered. A week ago, surrounded by love and support, Clara and Ben got married. It was a beautiful, heartfelt, and joy-filled ceremony. It was smaller and more humble than their original grand plan, but it was infinitely more meaningful, filled with the genuine love and joy of everyone present. There were a few curious, whispered questions from distant relatives about the absent parents, but we deftly and politely changed the subject. A united family. The day was about the couple, their love, and their future, not the pathetic drama manufactured by those who chose not to be there. Seeing Clara radiant and happy, her hand in Ben's, surrounded by people who truly loved and supported her for who she was a perfect, poetic ending to this long and painful saga. The wedding came and went smooth and perfect and filled with light, completely untouched by their darkness. Their desperate attempts to create a storm had only resulted in them getting left out in the cold rain, watching from the sidelines as life and joy moved on without them. David and I are at peace now, a deep and hard-won peace. Our family unit, him, me, our kids, and our chosen family of Clara, Ben, and my wonderful parents, is stronger, more honest, and more loving than ever. The toxicity has been surgically removed from our lives, and the scar tissue that has formed is strong. Their occasional pathetic social media posts are now just background noise, the final, whimpering cries of people who chose pride, lies, and manipulation over love, honesty, and family. We don't have the time, the energy, or the inclination for their drama anymore. We've closed that chapter, We've moved on, and we've built a happier, healthier, and more authentic life without them in it. And for that, I am profoundly and eternally grateful.